Hi, this is Deep Listening podcast episode number 2. The title is The North Wind and the Sun. It's a story from Aesop's Fable. We will be talking about how we can use certain stories as a tool for deep, compassionate listening. We hope you enjoy the conversation.
Good to see
How are you?
Pretty good. Good to see you. And we've actually been talking for a bit before we started this recording. So talking to you and having a chance to have you listen to me and listening to you, it definitely has already improved my mood.
That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah. So we're on.
Well, so
Yeah.
today, I mean, in the past, we talked about, different things about deep listening. And one of the things that we had me wanting to talk about was something that, we were talking, I was mentioning about this story, Aesop's story, how that story kind of lives deep inside me, since I was little.
Mhm.
And I just thought that would be really cool to talk about how we can use story to learn about deep listening. It can be a great tool to bring up, so that in a difficult time, like the difficult conversation we have when we're feeling like, oh, I'm just having really hard time um being there for other people, to speak, so that I can really listen to them, right? So it will be really cool. We can talk about that. And the story is the sun and the wind. And I remember telling friends about it, and nobody really knew about the story. I remember listening to this story when I grew up in Japan. So I must have been, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. But that's like one story that just like, that I couldn't forget. And it really helped me in different times throughout my life. So maybe we can start
Yeah.
reading about it, or you can maybe read the story, or
Gonna pull it up on my screen and let's read it.
okay.
Okay. So this is Aesop's Fables for Children, The North Wind and the Sun. The North Wind and the Sun had a quarrel about which of them was the stronger. While they were disputing with much heat and bluster, a traveler passed along the road wrapped in a cloak. Let us agree, said the Sun, that he is the stronger who can strip that traveler of his cloak. Very well, growled the North Wind, and at once sent a cold, howling blast against the traveler. With the first gust of wind, the ends of the cloak whipped about the traveler's body, but he immediately wrapped it closely around him, and the harder the wind blew, the tighter he held it to him. The North Wind tore angrily at the cloak, but all his efforts were in vain. Then the sun began to shine. At first, his beams were gentle, and in the pleasant warmth after the bitter cold of the north wind, the traveler unfastened his cloak and let it hang loosely from his shoulders. The sun's rays grew warmer and warmer. The man took off his cap and mopped his brow. At last, he became so heated that he pulled off his cloak and, to escape the blazing sunshine, threw himself down in the welcome shade of a tree by the roadside. Every Aesop's fable story has a moral, and the moral of this story: gentleness and kind persuasion win where force and bluster fail.
It's interesting. It just dawned on me that the way I remember this story was that it was the wind who came up to the sun, and the wind was kind of cocky, right? It's like, I'm strong. Hey, you want to like challenge me, and but in this story it's the other way around, right? And I mean, the wind was like, the way I remember was that the wind was so sure that he was stronger than the sun. Like, I can get that guy's coat off. I'm sure there are different, versions, but people ended up making it maybe.
Yeah, I
But
wonder if there might be different versions of it, like in the retelling. Yeah,
but can I tell you why this story was so
yeah, please.
powerful to me
Yeah,
growing up?
yeah, please.
Um, I actually, I'm sure I remembered this story, like I said, throughout my life here and there. But I I was doing this podcast, was it a year or two ago? And I talked about this African American guy, Daryl Davis, in my podcast, and how he ended up visiting this one of the Ku Klux Klan leaders. And so this guy Davis, he just wanted to listen to what this Ku Klux Klan guy needed to say. And there was a video about a YouTube video and TED Talk and all that. But I was really intrigued by the story, how he, this Daryl Davis person, he didn't go in there with this force of the wind, like the wind saying, I'm going to change this KKK guy's mind. But he went with this attitude of the sun. That's how I imagined it.
Mhm.
So he said, hey, I just want to visit and I want to talk to you. Or not that I want to talk to you, but I want to hear what you need to say. I want to just listen to your story. So when I did this podcast, um, this story really just sort of was, had a rebirth, in me.
Mhm.
And then that was kind of the strong image that I had. And then I realized, yeah, this story, it's been like there for me for throughout my life, and it sort of helped me. And then I remember, like, you and I, talking not on the podcast but different times, um how you mentioned like using stories, poetry, music is a powerful way to understand situations in life and different things. And I've just thought, wow, that's that is brilliant. um so I don't know, it'd be kind of interesting to talk about it, because was that last time, I can't remember, in the podcast or just a private conversation I had with you, like I was confiding with you. It's like, I want to be able to deeply listen to others, but what do we do when we can't,
Right,
when the
right.
conversation is really difficult? um so I think talking about this Aesop's story, and just talking about this difficult conversation, what do we do, what can we do,
Right.
um we can kind of get into that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm we thought a little bit about what we were going to talk about today, and my mind is going slightly in a different direction, in the sense
Mhm.
that you're just referencing how to have these conversations when you're stirred up, when there's some topic that's hard for people to talk about, when the other style of other person is communicating is not something that works for you.
Mhm.
How do you stay present? Because when you think about the sun offers me an image of presence,
Mhm.
right? The wind is about an efforting, a trying,
Mhm.
an agenda. I'm going to blow this coat off this man, you know.
Yeah.
And the sun image is, well, maybe there's that there in the background, but it's this sort of like, I'm going to shine my warmth on this human being.
Mhm.
And I think that's where the power is of this image or this story for me. And it's pointing us to presence. You know,
Mhm.
it's the power of our presence that shifts everything in life, in
Right.
every interaction with ourselves. And
Right.
so yeah, so I wonder about how do we bring ourselves to presence
Mhm.
in
Well, so I didn't explain in details about this old podcast I did on my own about Daryl Davis,
right,
and Ku Klux Klan. And so what happened was, I guess, as you're explaining, Daryl Davis was like this presence, of the sun, right? And he knew that going in there and then criticizing the Ku Klux Klan wasn't gonna do any good. So, I mean, Daryl Davis himself, he's an African American, right? So, um, I was really impressed with his, I don't know what to call it, attitude, but he just wanted to be there and then wanted to get to know him. There was no agenda in terms of how could I convince
yeah,
this guy to change his mind. And it was this like persistent, consistent appearance. Like he would visit over and over and over. And then all he does was just to sit with him and then just be there and then listen to him. And
yeah,
then that's, in the end, that's how he gained the trust from the KKK
right,
person. And in the end, the amazing story was that in the end, this one of the heads of the KKK guy, he ended up really appreciating Daryl Davis because he realized, okay, this guy's not here to criticize me. He's been here to just be here and listen to me. So he ended up appreciating Daryl Davis, and then he ended up quitting, leaving the organization,
right,
and along with him, like 200 members left
right,
the organization.
right,
So that was a story, and then it was interesting how the story, the wind and the sun, the image came up to me,
right, right,
and it's I just like that your interpretation of the sun being, being present,
right, right,
um
right,
that unconditional presence, right?
right, right. And we talked about the listening partnership, and I said that for me, there's several things that are key to that relationship. It is the power of your presence. We think we need to do something fancy, but we don't. We just need to be present with people. And the more, yes, we need to do our work. We need to be kind of undo all of our voices and our judgments and our emotional tightnesses, which people do in all kinds of ways, because that's what allows you to just breathe and be here with somebody. And that power of that for anyone, it is beyond measure. It's beyond anything. And, you know, you just use a very poignant example of Jared Davis and how that, what seemed like one simple relationship impacted so many relationships. Imagine. So like the transformative effect of that. So we think it's not the quick way to do things. And it's
Right.
not, oh, I've got to accomplish this agenda. I've got to make sure this person sees the errors of their ways, or if it's more personal, I have to stop this person from hurting me. You know, they're not doing it right. They're not like say with my husband over the years. It's for God's sake, how many times do I have to go through this process and explain everything? But it's never really worked to be critical in any way. And I've resented that because I'm like, well, I should be able to be critical. You know, you should be able to hear what I have to say. And, you know, but it's coming from this like a tight place in myself. It's it's not the presence. It's
Right.
not an accepting, gentle place. But I don't even think we have to go that far. I mean, in those relationships, sometimes you have to, these are deep relationships, right? I've been with my husband 20, 25 years. I'm staying with this person, but I want to make this work. I want to make this dialogue work. And it's our bond and it's our relationship. And it's tough, but I've been reminded over and over again that I have to really, really dig deep and come home to being here with him and myself and not have an agenda, even though I have a part of me that's so desperate to get what I want. Yeah.
Yeah.
So desperate, right? So those are more deeper relationships, and that's the sun wind you know, image. But even with somebody just meet at the store, like you were talking about, a grocery store counter, or getting help, or, you know, somebody a little arrogant with you in a meeting, or you know, whatever. There's situations that aren't those long lasting ones where you have to keep working through these things, but you can still do your best to show up as the sun.
Yeah.
And I, you know, I think, you know, we're talking about how to have these difficult conversations. Some of these are with people that we don't know very well, right? Some of them are with people we know in our lifetime, right? Like, you know.
Yeah. There's this maybe like especially in this country, like living in this country, in this kind of culture,
But
there's
the
this
US, right?
US, yeah.
Yes.
There's this belief that, you know, we have to be a go-getter. We have to control the situation. We have to demand, you know, what you need, otherwise you won't get it. And that, I think, even like the persuasion, you know, there's the I don't know, people learn how to debate and all that stuff. There is like this desire to learn to control or something,
Right.
you know, a situation, the other people that you're talking to. And we forget that, you know, oftentimes the more we try to control, the worse the situation is, right? Whereas if we just kind of step back and take the role of this presence, the sun, and listen instead of wanting to persuade, instead of wanting to say what I think, something shifts, you know. And sure, I still maybe want, you know, certain kind of answer. I want that person to change his or her mind or whatever. But when something shifts, from, you know, at least from my experience, I feel like I actually, in a more easier way, I end up getting what I actually wanted in the end. Like, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
For example, you know, let's say like my son one time came back from school and he kind of blurted out something. And then, of course, I want to know what went on.
Right, right,
right? And this is actually a true story. I won't go into details, but
right.
like I could just feel, hand coming out of my throat, and I go, oh, I want to know, I want to know, and because I could tell it was something difficult, and then I just had to go, okay, I noticed that, I noticed my wanting, I want to control the situation by, asking him what went on, and I want to know what went on, and he should be telling me and all that stuff. But instead, just kind of sit back and ask myself, okay, what if I didn't do that? What if I just continued what I was doing, which was, I don't know, I was maybe wiping the counter, kitchen counter, or making food or something. And I could feel the air shifting, the situation sort of shifting. And I said nothing about wanting to know more about what he started to say. And I genuinely kind of let go of wanting to control that situation. And sure enough, he started to tell me, you
Mhm.
know, he initiated, volunteered to tell me. That's just one example.
Right,
But even that to me, like, evokes that story that I heard when I was little, the wind
right,
and the sun.
right.
But I don't know. Can you think of like any example like that for you, for yourself, or?
My mind and coming up with a concrete example, but the image that, or the story, or the idea that's coming up to me is about, in a lot uh, of practices, the
Mhm,
idea of surrendering and letting go,
mhm,
and uh, letting go of attachments, as in Buddhism, you know,
mhm,
or even if I look at nonviolent communication, you
right.
have needs versus strategy. You focus on the need. So in that situation, your need was for connection, for example, with your son. Uh, the strategy might have been to pull it out of him, right? And go up to him or barrage him with questions or something like that. but
Mhm,
but that's not the need. It's not the need. It's just this one strategy, is one approach. Another approach, as we're
mhm,
talking about the sun and the wind, another approach is to center inside yourself and
mhm,
connect with yourself and notice what you need, and
right.
notice that he's this autonomous human being and he
Mhm,
has a right to his space and coming to what he can come to asking for what he needs. You don't have
mhm,
to pull it out of him. And I think that's kind of ongoing learning that I have with my husband.
mhm.
He's such a quiet man, and
Such a what?
quiet,
Mhm,
um, and reserved. He's not necessarily very expressive, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And all my strategies are kind of derived from this kind of like trying to pull something out of him,
mhm.
or instead of just offering something of myself. It's like
Yeah.
and I think even we could say that what you did was offer something of yourself. When you calm down, you weren't trying to take anything from your. Come on, tell me what I need to know so I can feel connected to you. I'm gonna breathe and then he can feel your presence
Mhm,
as you centered inside yourself. You weren't
mhm,
looking externally for that. And that's what I'm thinking about with this, that with my husband, I'm always doing that. I'm looking for something. I'm reminded of that mirror example that Michael Brown uses in the presence process. Um, he, in the presence process is a book that Aiko and I have read over the years. It's a process to help us be present,
Mhm.
basically, if the simplest word. We could say more about it another time. But that mirror exercise where you look at yourself in the mirror and you try to
Mhm.
take from another person. But
Right.
if you try the exercise, you'll see, and it's like you taking your like you see that you're taking from yourself in a way,
Yeah.
and when you give, you're giving to yourself.
Yeah. Do you remember he said that don't just imagine doing that, but go to the mirror and then do it, because then you really feel that you're taking it from others,
Yeah.
but then you're seeing yourself in the mirror and then things are taken out of yourself. Yeah.
And so anyway, but it just reminded, because it's a lesson that I have been struggling to learn. I
Mhm.
mean, I've been just struggling to learn, like, because I just think it's just a unique dynamic that we have, and my own struggles, right? Like I mentioned earlier, the desperation to get what I want. Could you just be here with me? Or, could you just, validate something for me,
Yeah.
and it's such a deep need, like, or like that, that it comes out of, and then it defeats my purpose, right?
Mhm.
And or just defeats getting that need. It's a strategy that I keep employing over and over again. So I'm like basically the wind, trying to
Mhm.
change you. Like, come on, just give me what I need. And it could not even look like that. I'm not even
Mhm.
saying anything, but my heart is like, there's something wrong with you. You're not giving me what I need.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm just gonna be here.
Mhm.
I'm going to be here and acknowledge what I need,
Mhm.
acknowledge where I am and who I am,
Yeah.
and let that have its transformational effect.
Right.
And listen, I mean, you use the example of Daryl Davis. I mean, since we're talking about listening, so it's about being present, but being receptive.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
I wonder if we talked about it in our first podcast, you and I,
yeah,
ours. Maybe not. I get confused
yeah,
because we talk on the phone too.
yeah, yeah,
But I remember when I was having a just emotionally, mentally, physically difficult time one evening, I called somebody. Actually, she's a therapist, but she's a friend, and well, we became friends sort of. And I think I called a few people, but nobody answered, and I called her. And because she's a therapist, um, she kind of wanted to help me, right? Because I said I'm having a hard time right now, and her approach wasn't the wind approach, but also wasn't the sun either, because she wanted me to do something. She wanted, she instructed me to do this, to do that, so that to her mind I could get out of this
yeah,
discomfort, right? And I remember just feeling so okay, it's like this is not what I want right now.
yeah,
And I just remember that day so clearly, because I just wanted to hang up, because I'm like, this is not what I'm needing right now. But I couldn't do that because she was there for me, right? And what I needed was somebody to just be there and listen to me,
right,
you know understand how difficult I physically difficult thing I was feeling. And um I realized, that's so powerful. Like, oftentimes I mean, it depends on the situation too. Like sometimes I do call people going, tell me what to do, tell me
Yeah.
your I want your advice.
Right.
But
Right.
often it is really that I want somebody who's just there and then holding me metaphorically,
Right. 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 Right.
that space and just being caring in a sense that the person is just acknowledging,
Right.
what's
Right.
going on with me.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Yeah. So when when we were talking about this, it's not just what the story represents, but how do we use this story
mhm,
metaphor that the story offers to guide our interaction with people?
yeah.
Because this Aesop's Fable is a powerful image, as is the Daryl Davis story. That's a powerful story.
Mhm,
Even thinking about my relationship with my husband for so many years, wow, how many times you have to do the same strategy before you get your lesson, right?
mhm,
And and so
right.
how do we conjure, invite presence, receptivity,
Mhm,
true listening,
right.
witnessing in others? How do
Yeah.
we offer that to the world?
I think your idea of using a story, in this case, The Wind and the Sun, poetry, music, like s- stories are really powerful, right? It kind of lives within you. And like for me, sometimes if I come into a difficult situation where I want to be a good listener, I want to just listen to what the other is saying. But if it comes to a point where the other person judges what I'm saying, or or the other person is saying something that I don't agree with, um, we can use the image of the story, right? I'm like, oh, what, you know what? I have a choice of becoming the wind or becoming the sun. And what would the sun do?
Right,
It doesn't do anything. It's going to be there
right,
for you, for the other person, for the person. And just having that, little pause and have that image. And if I was the other person, yes, I would like the sun to be just there shining on me, giving me warmth, light. Those are two things, I guess, just recalling the story and then also knowing that I have choice
right, right,
to be either one of them. And then also the third thing is like, what would I want if I was the other person? And maybe just have like this little curiosity, right? Like a little, almost a game going, what if like I tried it, you know? I mean, this is not like um any kind of emergency, life or death kind of situation when you're just talking with
right.
somebody, just having this disagreement or something, right? So yeah, maybe I can try that. And how would I uh, act if I was the son? Do I need to even go there to a point where, well, like I don't have to express my opinions. I don't have to try to change that person's opinion. but
Yeah.
just be
Curiosity,
there.
key word.
Yeah.
Curiosity is a key word. To be curious about the person, their point of view, their situation, their story,
Mhm.
their background.
Yeah. I was just talking with somebody on the phone, and I can't even remember who it was, but anyway, I think it was a woman, and she was about to go into talk about something that I thought that, oh no, is she going to talk about this? And I could feel, in my body, it's like, okay, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable because I think she's going to say this, or she's going to talk about this,
Right.
or she is misunderstanding what I'm saying or something. And I remember catching myself and go, okay, don't just react. Don't go there, because it'll be the same thing over and over if I don't catch myself. And I'm like, it's okay that I allow this person to say whatever she needs to say. I don't have to take it personally.
Mhm.
I don't have to interpret it, in any way. I can just listen and then try to listen to the whole thing that she has to say. Don't assume that she's going to say this or that, right? And I think because you and I talk about this listening thing, that I think more and more, not every time, but I'm able to catch myself, you know? And so, like, just talking about this kind of thing all the time helps too. Having story, the image of the story, even like going to this memory of the time somebody was just there listening to you, holding space for you,
Right.
uh, that kind of puts you in a better place,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I mean, we don't have there's also different contexts, right, where we find ourselves in. And those situations, it could be brief encounters, it could be long conversations, it could be a group
Right.
conversation, they can be all kind of, so each of them requires something a little different, right? But
Right.
it's still calling ourselves back to what you're saying about how do we remind ourselves that we
Mm-hmm.
have this different option.
Mm-hmm.
And all we can do is that we remind ourselves we have another option.
Yeah. That thing that I said about like assumption, like don't assume that, you
Mhm.
know, even if even if a person said something that you don't agree with, you don't like, even then maybe that immediate judgment is what kind of
Right,
triggers us, right?
right,
So, but if we just give a little bit of space, going, okay, let's not assume that this person meant harm, or you know um just a little bit of like, don't take things personally, or don't assume something,
right,
to create a little bit of space.
right. I was reading something by, Brene Brown, that
Yeah.
expert on vulnerability. One of the terms was, I forget what the word was that she used, but basically the gist was assume the best at the intention,
Mm.
right? So you can even have a curiosity, and whatever the person did or said, you assume there's a reason for it that makes all the
Right.
sense, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's in the best interest of, like, you just give them the most broad perspective, most generous perspective on them,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
don't say, oh, he doesn't care about me, Henry, he didn't do that because he didn't care about me, to oh well, he didn't, it's not personal, he didn't take it, he didn't mean it, he's just in his own space, to oh, he might have actually thought about me and then decided that it didn't matter to me, and so he let it go. So
Mm.
like he, I could just go all the way back out and assume the best about him, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why not start from that place? Why does the story always go to the worst place
Right. Right.
in those dynamics?
Now,
Right?
what about like a situation where like I have to say something, right? Like I have to
Yeah,
talk,
good point.
and then the other person keeps interrupting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, because we're talking about being receptive as listeners to others, but we also want to be received, right?
Yeah.
How do we deal with that when we want to be
Right.
received?
Mhm.
And I think that's an interesting question. I mean, it depends on the context, right?
Right. I guess we can always ask, what would the son do
Mhm.
if in that case, right? Then I can be present and then maybe pause and kindly, like, just say, I really want to be heard right now. I wouldn't like to say what I need to say.
Mm.
If I could have that space or something.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Or even a little bit more instruction, right? Like it depends on the situation, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to listen to me for 5 minutes without saying a word
Yeah.
while I just finish
Right.
my end of it and just try your best to listen to me
Hmm.
without saying
Was
one.
that you? I think it was you. I was talking with you about I don't know if this
That's the
might
last
be
time.
off.
Yeah, this last week.
off
Yeah, I remember that because I remember you having an aha about something. I think about
yeah. So
critical music in your husband, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Listen to the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you
Yeah.
liking
And
that a lot. You got
I said, hey, so I had him listen to the music I created, and then he was like, huh. And then I'm already like, what's wrong?
right.
Right. And then you suggested, well, next time, maybe you can say, hey, I created this thing. I like it a lot. I'm kind of proud of myself, finishing this thing.
Yeah.
And then what did you say? Like,
You could
can
just say,
you,
could you tell me all the things you like about it?
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Did you try it?
But not yet. I totally forgot. Like yesterday, I showed it to him and he liked it immediately. He
Okay.
didn't go, huh?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So, but I think, right, it would be good to be vulnerable and say, hey, I, I want to show this to you. I like it. Please tell me what you like about it.
Right.
Um, that's okay to
Right.
do that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the wind and the sun. Um, we've kind of traveled a few places in this conversation.
Yeah.
The power of a story and some good examples of the power of presence to shift
Mhm.
and shift situations or kind of create more room for people to reveal themselves and for us to have conversations that are difficult. There's a
Mhm.
short-term relationships and there's long-term relationships like partners and children, and they all have a different quality to them, but they all require something of us about receptivity and curiosity and
Mhm.
questioning assumptions or letting and assuming best at the intent
Right.
of people. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
That, assuming best, like I think of the sun as this unconditional presence, but also the warmth, right? The kindness,
mm-mm.
that warm, gentle feeling, um, really lets this other person to go,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
bring the guard down.
yeah,
And then when the the other person's guard comes down, everything changes,
for sure.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we also reference how to maybe invite that for ourselves, because we don't want to leave ourselves out of that equation. And if there's someone or something that's causing us to feel like we're not heard, how do we gently ask for that? Just like, can you, listen and
Mhm.
find ways, strategies, ways to ask for that in situations.
Right.
And I think of all of this as there's a feminine energy to it. Not that
Mhm.
men don't go there, right? I mean, in these fables, they're men, the wind and the sun are represented
Right.
as male figures, right? Whatever. But I think it's a feminine quality that I associate,
Mhm.
the receptivity. And I think the world needs more and more of that, right?
Mhm.
I certainly need it, and it's healthy also for my body to be in
Yeah.
that state, you know,
Right.
in that state,
Yeah.
relaxed receptivity, openness, hearted warmth, connected to myself and others, assuming the best about them.
Mhm.
Well, yeah,
And like ear- earlier off the podcast, you were talking about how part of you was not kind to yourself, right? Like
right,
saying,
right,
like I can say, oh, I'm such a loser, I'm
right,
so selfish. So how can we be there for ourselves, like be the listener, you know the listener, like the sun, like how can we be kind of listening to another part of you saying these things,
right,
because the more warmth and kind you show to that part of yourself, that part of you will bring the guard down and maybe feel like it or she was acknowledged,
right.
right?
Right. When this is a much bigger topic, and it comes from a lot of different places for me, but Orca Byron Katie is one of them. But when we're dealing with another person, we're always only meeting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that everybody's a part of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
When I was talking earlier before we started this podcast, you said you could so resonate with the feeling I was having. And, when we're hard on ourselves or we're hard on others, it's just a part of us that we're hard on ourselves.
Right.
And, even if you take the Daryl Davis example, I mean, like you're just meeting a part of yourself that never got listened to.
Right. Oh, that's
A part that is desperately vulnerable and hiding
Mhm.
and covering it up with defensiveness and attack, right?
Right.
And I certainly have an attacker on myself, right? If I have a lot of voices in there's a one that attacks,
Mm-hmm.
that attacks me and attacks others.
Right.
It can be very subtle, right? Some of us never want to admit that part of ourselves, but I, the it's the shadow self, right? And that's a whole nother, conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're just always meeting yourself. How
Mhm.
courageous can you meet yourself is kind of a question, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Right.
not,
Well, that's
yeah,
a big, that's huge.
yeah. Might be
Mm-hmm.
so far. Maybe we'll save that for next time.
Aisha and I hope you enjoy the conversation. If you like, please subscribe. Also, if you have any stories that you know that may relate to what we're talking about, deep listening, deep compassionate listening, please comment below. Till next time.
Maybe it's just your name that makes me